Hey, mahal everyone. Welcome back again to the Broadway Saiyan YouTube channel. I am your host 40 and we are back with another video on Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, specifically the global version of Dissidia Opera Omnia. In today's video, we're going to be discussing a character that we recently received in Global Opera Omnia, which is Kain Highwind, and whether he is good or not. Now, I do want to give a big shout out to a good buddy of mine who is an amazing DFFOO player and very knowledgeable on the game, who goes by the name of MyNoSpellGood. I do apologize if I mispronounce that, but he is a well-known Redditor in the subreddit for DFFOO. He writes amazing write-up and analysis for current characters and also future characters that we will be receiving in the global version of the game. He did a great write-up of Kain Highwind, which I will be leaving the link to that Reddit post on the video description as well as the pinned comments, because a majority of the information that is on this video is coming from that. So thank you so much, MyNoSpellGood. Be sure to check him out, guys. He is an amazing Redditor and an amazing player. So, Kain Highwind, good or not? With the recent release of Final Fantasy IV's Dragoon All-Star Kain Highwind within the global version of Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, many players have asked the question whether or not he is worth pulling for and how he stacks up with the current content of the global version of the game. With characters ruling the global meta such as Aiko, Sazh, Papalymo, Squall, Lightning, and Tidus, the Dragoon Master has been receiving a lot of doubt about his prowess in combat against the current meta of the global version. I, the Broadway Saiyan, am here to show you why Kain is still a powerhouse and should not be underestimated. Kain Highwind, what he brings to the game. Kain comes to us global players as a powerful ranged DPS specialist boasting two very powerful abilities. In this discussion, we will look at his abilities with both 15 and 35 CP weapon passives and with all of his best equipment equipped. We will not take into account artifact passives, as when we compare him to some of the cast, we want this to be an even playing field. Ability 1, Jump 3 with his 15 CP passive. Kain increases his Brave first by 50% of his current attack stat, then followed by another increase at a 1.5 multiplier before landing an HP attack. He will also buff himself with his unique buff called Pride of the Dragoon, attack and max Brave plus 30% for 6 turns. Low action delay is also given to this ability. It also changes his Brave attack to Jump while his unique buff is active. Jump is a one-hit Brave attack that is ranged with a low action delay and a damage modifier of 110%. Ability 2, Gungnir. With 35 CP passive, Kain performs a one-hit range Brave plus HP attack with a monstrous 190% damage modifier and a low action delay. He will also grant himself 2 buffs, attack up 30% and max Brave up 30% for 6 turns, and keep in mind, these two are separate generic buffs, so they will stack with what Pride of the Dragoon gives him. So that is a total of attack up 60% and max Brave up 60% for 6 turns, which is huge. Kain may not have the greatest initial Brave or max Brave, but this is alleviated with his self buffs coming from both skills. With his current best gear fully MLB'd, Kain boasts the largest attack stat in the global version of the game at a base of 1,867, with his Pride of the Dragoon unique buff that goes up to 2,427, and with his buffs from Gungnir it reaches a monstrous 2,987. This means that Kain can potentially refill his Brave by 1,494 alone with Jump 3, since the first Brave refill is based on 50% of his attack. His max Brave at base and with all his best gear MLB'd is unfortunately at 4,800, which is low. However, since he grants himself a total of 60% max Brave up with both of his abilities, this amount skyrockets to a high 7,680. This puts his max Brave with just his own buffs at one of the highest amounts in global. Kain's Jump 3 currently has the highest Brave multipliers in the game. For example, Zidane Free Energy, which is similar, only grants him the 1.5 multiplier to his Brave. Terra's Meltdown only grants her a Brave multiplier of 1.2, and Sarah, who is the closest to Kain's with her multipliers, grants her Brave first based on only 30% of her attack, and then a Brave multiplier of 1.3 with her Moonlight ability. All three of these still fall short of Kain's Jump 3, giving him a Brave refill based on 50% of his attack and a multiplier of 1.5 right afterwards. And Kain's Jump 3 deals only HP damage. This means he can bypass enemies who may be resisting his range DPS and just go straight for the jugular. He just goes straight for their HP. So this is what Kain is currently bringing to us in the global version of the game. Now, Kain versus Lightning, and I chose Lightning because they have some similarities. So both Kain and Lightning are very similar in that they self-buff and turn-steal with their abilities. Lightning turn-steals a bit more due to the break mechanic that her abilities have. So Flourish of Steel versus Gungnir with passives. Both abilities grant buffs to attack and max brave. Gungnir's are higher by 10% and last longer, but Flourish of Steels come in a unique buff called Commando Stance. Flourish of Steel, however, grants a brave regen, whereas Gungnir does not. Flourish of Steel's damage modifier is at 30% plus 30% for the first 2 hits and 70% for the grand total of 130%. However, Gungnir's is at a 190% damage modifier. Overall, Kain wins this comparison for overall damage. Lightning also cancels out her own buffs when she uses her other ability, whereas Kain keeps his buffs from both Jump 3 and Gungnir. Plus, Kain's buffs last twice as long, meaning Kain is a lot more consistent with his DPS compared to Lightning. And let's go ahead and take out a quick video comparison on just showcasing that. Next, we have Kain versus Papalymo. Both have a Brave plus HP ability. The most similar one in Papalymo's case is Astral Fire due to the buffs it grants him. Papalymo's is magic based, whereas Kain is ranged. So Astral Fire versus Gungnir with passives. Both abilities grant buffs to attack and max brave. Gungnir's, however, are higher on the max brave up, being at 30% versus Astral Fire's 20%. Both ability buffs last the same turn duration at 6 turns. Astral Fire's comes in the form of a unique buff called Astral Fire Stance. Astral Fire does miss out on the low action delay that Gungnir has. Astral Fire's damage modifier is at 140%. Gungnir's beats this by a whopping 50% at 190%. Again, Kain wins this for overall damage. Papalymo also suffers from losing his unique buffs every time he switches abilities. Kain does keep his buffs, again making him the more consistent damage dealer. And let's go ahead and take a look just at a comparison of their damage with this video. So Kain versus Squall and Vaan is going to be our next little bit of a comparison here. Squall and Vaan are two characters constantly being brought up who out DPS Kain because of their abilities. Squall's being his Renzokuken and Vaan with both his abilities due to the follow-up attacks. Squall's Renzokuken at its best does out DPS Kain's Gungnir by 10%, each hit being 33.3% times 6, which is a grand total of 200%. However, Squall does need to have his current Brave at 250% less than his initial Brave to trigger this. Renzokuken also grants Squall max Brave up 20% and attack up 30% for 5 turns. While the attack up is equal to that of Gungnir's buffs, the max Brave up is lower and his buffs only last 5 turns versus Gungnir's 6 turns. Vaan's Red Spiral plus White Out follow-up have a total damage modifier of 210%. His White Whirl plus Luminescence follow-up have a whopping overall damage modifier of 330%, which definitely dwarfs Gungnir's 190%. However, Vaan needs to set up these huge numbers with 2 usage for each ability. So the final conclusion on that is, bottom line, while these two can give Kain a run for his money damage-wise, they still need to set up or have some sort of prerequisite to do this. All Kain has to do is chuck his spear at the enemy. Also, Kain has his enormous self-buffs again to ensure he's always dishing out massive damage. So what's the biggest reason Kain is receiving so much doubt? Well, this is the reason why Kain is receiving so much doubt. That is right, Thanos has decided to use his time stone in the global version of Dissidia Opera Omnia and has given us Sazh. So Sazh's early buffs and the early release of his 35 CP weapon prevented Kain from enjoying the glory he had compared to when he was first released on the JP version of Dissidia Opera Omnia. Sazh's attack boost essentially buffs a character, turning them into another Kain with 60% attack up, 60% max brave up, and large critical rate up for 6 turns. Keep in mind, this will only override Kain's Gungnir buffs if used on him, giving him a whopping 90% up to both his max brave and attack. But essentially, because Sazh can support the party and make somebody essentially another Kain with those buffs, this is the reason why Kain was a bit overshadowed and why a lot of folks have been giving him a little bit of doubt when his release came in the global version of the game. So our boy Kain is not perfect, okay? So Kain really does need both of his weapons to perform at his monstrous best. However, every character in DFFOO is essentially gear reliant to be useful. So saying Kain is gear reliant, it's not really fair to him, as to be honest, every character really needs their gear to shine. There's a few abilities out there that can make do without their passives, but for the most part, most characters are essentially gear reliant. So we can't really use that argument, you know, with Kain saying that he's gear reliant, because that's for every character, but he does need his gear. Kain doesn't play well with buffers since he has some of the highest self buffs currently to offense. Other buffers won't add much to what he already does. He does best with debuffers to further soften up his targets to land massive damage. Here are some team examples. Team example 1, Kain Laguna Irvine. Irvine especially because he has that unique range imperil debuff which helps Kain out further. Team example 2, Kain, Tidus, and Vincent. Pretty self-explanatory. Both Tidus and Vincent have debuffs that can help Kain out. And then team example 3, Kain, Vanille, and Sazh. And the reason why I put Sazh there, even though he is a buffer, is because his buffs actually do give Kain a bit of a boost, giving him a total of 90% to max brave and attack. Alright, so our final conclusion on this topic of Kain. Kain is by far one of the best DPS currently in the global version of DFFOO. He will make a worthy addition to pull for in anyone's roster. However, if you already have successfully pulled for characters such as Sazh, Lightning, Aiko, Papalymo, Tidus, and Squall, or if you have no issues clearing the current level 90 lost chapters we have, then holding off on pulling for Kain may be a wise choice to save for other characters later on. Plus, with EX weapons and level 60 awakenings coming before the end of the year, saving gems and tickets will be quite fruitful. Alright guys, hopefully this video helps you guys out in understanding that Kain is a monster in Global Dissidia Opera Omnia. Not quite of the monster that he was when he first came out in JP, but he's still very good, so hopefully this video gives you insight on that. Once again, I am 40 the Broadway Saiyan. Stay tuned for the next video, and mahal everyone.